Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jacqueline Dorsey of Lean Frontiers and I'll serve as your host today. I'm excited to bring to you today a short webinar on Lean supply chain facilitated by Derrick Browning. Derrick leads and supports Lean supply chain projects at Lean Core and also has experience with deployment of Lean principles and practices in cross-functional areas. This session will be recorded if you want to refer back to it later. So for now, let me turn things over to Derrick.
All right, thanks, Jacqueline. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to those that are in attendance today. We've got some exciting things to discuss, and really wanted to camp out on the subject of extending lean from manufacturing into the supply chain. So before we get involved in the presentation, I wanted to give a quick introduction to Lean Core Supply Chain Group. Lean Core Supply Chain Group is a trusted supply chain partner that is specializing in providing guidance and execution expertise of Lean principles into supply chain management activities. We've got three divisions: a training and education division that focuses on taking the Lean, the Six Sigma operational excellence mindset and philosophies and applying them in the supply chain and training people to develop practical skills that they can apply in their supply chain settings to drive real results. Our consulting group is a project-based group that drives value in the end-to-end supply chain, really trying to drive an increased performance of supply chain by reducing lead time and improving revenue-generating activities of the supply chain, as well as reducing cost in the process. And then our logistics division is a full-service third-party logistics company that operates within those supply chains that are looking to take their company to the next level. So all in all, the organization exists to advance the world's supply chains. A brief overview of our customers can quickly show you that we've got a broad range of experience in multiple industries and multiple verticals. We have went deep into very complex supply chains, as well as working from the end of the supply chain to the other end, from customer back to supplier, and have learned quite a bit over the years. Now, the question at hand: how do we extend Lean from manufacturing into the supply chain? And we've got a very easy one-step process. Step one: you don't take Lean from manufacturing to the supply chain. And really what this is rooted in is a mindset and a philosophy that can be very kind of countercultural to Lean successes. Oftentimes what will happen is we'll run into folks at, say, an AME conference, or folks will call in, and it is a manufacturing person that has made a lot of improvements inside of their manufacturing facility. They have improved their flow of material internally, or they have gone down the journey to reduce batch sizes and go to one-piece flow. And then they reach out to us and they say, okay, we're done in manufacturing, and now we want you to help us fix our warehouse. And we often have to ask the question, why? Why are you doing this? How did you get here? And what we quickly find out is most of the companies are culturally ran by silo metrics, and they've got a management system at the top of the house that drives functional improvements at individual silo levels, and they are using these metrics and these kind of organizational driving systems to say, you know, we've really made some good improvements inside of manufacturing, and now it's time to now go to a new functional area. And it ends up being a bit of what we call corporate schizophrenia, or jumping around. And this debate has gone around for ages now. If you think in some of the early TQM days, W. Deming, as he came out strongly against Alfred Sloan and Drucker and the likes, and this kind of friction between folks going to the floor and seeing what's going on and understanding the current context versus a very measure and report type scenario. or the idea of do we run a kind of a full-scale Hoshin Conry inside of our organization, or do we perform some form of management by objective where we assign folks 3 to 5 metrics at every level of the organization and manage their success based on whether or not they hit those metrics. And what we typically find is that traditional organizations, even the ones that are deploying lean inside of manufacturing, is that they're doing it as if lean were one tool that would be used in one location at a time, almost like a hammer. And so we're going to come in with our lean hammer and we're going to bang on manufacturing for a while, and now we're going to then expand it to supply chain, which means we're going to go bang on our warehouses for a while, or we're going to go bang on our logistics functions for a while. So we really wanted to level set everyone and just have some discussion around when we say lean, what do we mean? And then as a result of that, what is this lean enterprise system? And so we've got here identified, and we perform this activity in a lot of our deployments, that lean is built on a purpose, that the lean enterprise has a purpose, and the company, the organization as a whole has a purpose. So if our purpose is aligned with creating customer value, then the activities that we perform inside of manufacturing, inside of the supply chain, and the business as a whole is aligned with creating that customer value. And we do that through a good utilization and a strong utilization of the people, making sure that these people are change agents and they're problem solvers, that they're systems thinkers, that they practice humility in their approach to solving problems, so that they want to learn from others as well as teach others in the process. But also we've got a process side of the house and a process side of our approach where we're focusing on stabilizing and standardizing the supply chain. We're focusing on practicing flow principles and quality of the source principles in the supply chain, eliminating waste, those activities that do not add value and do not align with our organizational purpose. And all of this is done in such a way that we want to be that learning organization that thinks long term, that has a respect for the humanity of the employees, of the customers, of the network around us. So as we level set on that, what lean is, it's not just this hammer that we go in and try to bang on processes to knock dollars out of it, but it's truly a philosophy that we're implementing in a business setting to drive business results, to better align us to customer value. And so if we're implementing it in a business setting, that means that it's going to have an implication to the business strategy. To what is our annual and 5-year strategy, our plans, and how we're going to deploy this strategy, that overall Hoshin Conry. It's going to have implications into our product development and life cycle management. It's very common for us to hear companies say, well, we're implementing lean in manufacturing, but our manufacturing is struggling because our product development group is releasing all new products every year. And they're doing that without really thinking through the impact to the end-to-end supply chain, or the sales and marketing. So we're trying to implement lean inside of our manufacturing facilities, but we're struggling with the level flow of orders coming in because sales and marketing are running promotions and not conversing with us on when they're running promotions, or when they run a promotion, they'll follow it up with something else that doesn't align with our production strategy, with our supply chain strategy. And then ultimately supply chain. And we've defined supply chain, if we think about supply chain as all of the information and material flow of the end-to-end process, then we try to coach companies that rather than taking a lean tool from a manufacturing environment into other areas of the company, we're going to apply lean thinking to the entire supply chain. And we're going to run our business with a sense of supply chain centricity. Now, that usually kind of piques the ears of lean thinkers, because lean thinkers, they want to align with what the customer deems as being value add, and that's correct. But what we have to recognize is that to truly deliver value to the customer, we have to understand all of our process capabilities and the process that is aligned to deliver that value. So even as we make decisions to support customer and add value to customer, we're doing that with consideration and respect to the overall supply chain, the people and process elements, the material and the information flow elements of the supply chain. Now you notice inside of this supply chain, manufacturing is one component. And it's very common for us in our surveys and our interactions for companies to think of supply chain in terms of just inbound from supplier to plant, or inbound from supplier to a warehouse, or outbound from the plant to the customer. And they think about supply chain as just segments or silos. And we've got to keep pushing back on that and say that no, we're talking supply chain as a system, that we need to be systems thinkers. Now, what does it mean to be a system thinker? If we say that an organization needs to begin thinking systematically, well, a lot of times the mind quickly goes to technology. Well, we have just installed a new ERP system, or we're in the middle of installing that system, or we can't afford that system. And to some extent, the information flow portion of a supply chain will be embedded in the system, and systems can enable us to be more systems thinkers. But when we say systems thinking, we're talking about, similar to what Kaufman and Senge wrote, that this characteristic of the system is that it can't be understood by a function of its isolated components. So this means that it is not just a series of silos. It's not a series of buckets on a P&L statement. But the system is defined, the behavior of the system is defined on how each part interacts with the rest of the parts. So that means in the traditional org structure and functional silo structure that we see, when the CEO is sitting at the top of the house looking at reports and making sure that each of the buckets and the silos are hitting their numbers, all the while within the buckets and silos there's conflict and there's not a sense of alignment. Our purchasing folks are trying to drive bill of material costs down. Our sales and marketing and product development folks are trying to develop new products and all new components and run promotions, all of which are trying to optimize their silo metrics. And so when we think about how do we take lean manufacturing, or those folks that have deployed lean inside of their plants and facilities, and begin to branch it out to the rest of supply chain, it's really an organizational approach. It's saying that we're no longer going to accept this idea of corporate schizophrenia. Now, I'm sure we've all seen corporate schizophrenia in play. Corporate schizophrenia occurs when the leadership manages by objectives and they're constantly bouncing around from area of the P&L to area of the P&L. So if they see logistics costs start to go up, immediately there's a focus on that. There's a project team together. People are jumping on planes or driving down the road and having meetings and saying, how do we get this back down? And we hit it with the hammer. Some people, they label that hammer lean. We've got this lean department. We're going to send the lean department there, or the operational excellence department there, and they're going to go fix this. And then as soon as they get that problem fixed, what they don't realize is that often that causes another problem in another area. So you say, oh, costs are going up. Well, let's do a new carrier RFQ. Now we're going to select the lowest cost carriers. But the problem there is now on-time delivery goes out of whack. So now what do we see? We see our inbound docks and our outbound docks start to increase their amount of overtime. We start to see disgruntled customers calling back and additional expedites. And so the original problem of the transportation cost doesn't go away, only temporarily does it go away. All the while we've created other instability and problems in other areas of the organization. So we're making each independent decision without the information associated with the rest of the organization, without an end-to-end supply chain-centric view of the organization. So we try to advance supply chains by first we want to build a management system. And this management system is taking into consideration what is going on at each kind of functional area, and how do we synchronize these functional areas, help them communicate, help the metrics that serve these areas be cross-functional, and so that we can see the impacts of each of our decisions into the supply chain. But we understand that even the best of metric systems are not going to enable us to operate effectively in every decision. So we want our management system to be guided by these principles, by operating principles. And these are focused on core processes and how those core processes should perform with respect to other areas of the supply chain. So our product development people, they may have a principle that says we're not going to develop something that we're not able to source and manufacture within a timely manner, and that time can be defined. Okay? All of this pointing up to overall supply chain goals, end-to-end goals, some of which are financial, where we want to drive true results, revenue increases and cost decreases, but some of them are non-financial. These could be behavioral. These could be communicative activities. So we want to try to layer this system in place so that the management system supports our operating principles, which ultimately supports our supply chain goals, the goals for the end-to-end process. And many of these goals are driven right around organizational performance. It's been said that logisticians and supply chain people really try to do 10 things. They want to deliver the right product to the right customer in the right quantity, with the right quality, at the right time, from the right source, at the right price, at the right cost, with the right service, and all within the right amount of complexity. And so when trying to implement each of these rights, these Bill of Rights, if you will, a lot of organizations will turn to lean and operational excellence activities to drive value inside of the functional areas. The problem is that they won't see the results from these activities. They'll see a lean or an operational excellence team circle into an area to try to work on a subset of these components, but because the management system isn't effective and the principles are not there to guide them, they end up falling short of really achieving the actual results. Or they develop some results, and as they're calculating them up, they find out that all of them are soft costs and none of them are actually going to show up on the P&L. And so the question is, why do these activities fail? And they often fail because the decisions that are occurring inside of our system are not within supply chain, but the costs that are realized in our system occur within supply chain. So think about this for a second. Our business strategy, what is our core purpose? And the determination of what value we create for customers. This determination, this understanding is often made outside of supply chain, outside of our manufacturing, outside of the material flows, and yet it has a major impact on our supply chain. So you've got decisions happening outside of supply chain that affect our supply chain activities. Product development, life cycle management. From a quality to source standpoint, what better place for us to spend our time? Making sure that we're developing products that not only we can manufacture, but we can deliver, but that we can source, that we can work through our entire supply chain without having piles of inventory to really deliver value to our customer. And sales and marketing, how do we facilitate the exchanges of these goods or services for dollars? And which customers do we want to target? Which customers are the right partner customers? What channels are we going to sell through? Each of these decisions that we're making, we often make inside of silos, and they have a tremendous impact on the supply chain. And then we say we want to now use lean in the supply chain to fix supply chain problems or drive cost reduction within the supply chain. And so we say, well, step back. If we're going to go into supply chain and ask the questions, how are we going to fulfill orders for these products and services, we also have to do a round of education and a round of assessment to the business strategy, the product development and life cycle management, the sales and marketing areas, so that we can gain a good understanding as an organization how the supply chain functions and what decisions we're making and what that impact will be to our supply chain. And likewise, if we're going to make certain decisions, there may be times where our supply chain needs to change and adapt to support those decisions. But having the forward visibility and the conversation going can be very helpful for these organizations and really reduce a lot of waste on the back end when a lean team may come in and try to clean up a mess. So this supply chain-centric organization management system, it really encourages employees to consider the future supply chain implications when they're making current decisions. Now this means that we're really trying to consider what are the unintended consequences when we launch this new product, when we move this warehouse, when we get this new carrier on board? What are the unintended consequences, the additional complexity that is going to occur inside of our network, inside of our supply chain? And then as a result of that, well, what kind of complexity should we plan for? Now, we all want a more simple supply chain, but oftentimes as we try to simplify our supply chain, we end up outsourcing it or moving it around, and we have a very surface level picture of what supply chain looks like, and it ends up being more complex than what it originally was. So we want to plan the amount of complexity for our supply chain and ask the hard questions to do that accordingly. Before we outsource, we've got to understand what problems are we trying to solve by outsourcing this. And then how do we objectively measure and validate the assumed value or waste that's created in the supply chain from the business decisions that we're making? So as we try a new business strategy, as we enter a new market, how are we going to measure and then validate whether or not this was a right decision? And then based on that measurement and validation, what's the feedback mechanism to the rest of the business? If the feedback mechanism is only sent to specific departments that may or may not have had all of the contributing inputs into the effects of this decision, then it may be poor feedback. So if we were able to look at that feedback and say, well, we did not, as we validated, we did not do what we said we were going to do, and we can point to different functions and areas of the supply chain that broke down and didn't connect correctly, then we're able to solve problems and learn from an integrated supply chain focus so that future decisions can be better. Now, as we're trying to grab this data and pull this data together to make the right decisions, we're not always going to have the right data. It's not always going to be in the right places at the right time. And so that's why we need also guiding principles. These guiding principles, they need to be able to focus on supply chain performance, which can reduce supply chain operating cost. Let's face it, a lot of times we manage supply chains as if it were a cost-only exercise. And if that were truly the case, then we could shut down every warehouse that we have. We could stop buying any product from any supplier. We could turn off any manufacturing facilities, send everybody home, and cost would be zero. And when I say that, everybody chuckles a bit, because we recognize as supply chain thinkers that the activities that are occurring in our supply chain are adding value that really is attached to revenue generating activity. So how do we align these processes to deliver more revenue to us? We focus on people development and process improvement. So the people development is in and around how do we as an organization run the supply chain system more effectively? How does the supply chain system drive more value to the end customer? Try to impart this fundamental understanding of supply chain operating management principles to all members of the organization. We want to encourage supply chain centric decision making. So that means anybody that's making a decision within our organization is thinking, what is the impact of this decision to the entire system? Upstream, downstream, from customer to supplier, to the information flow to the material flow. And we're enabling this supply chain centric decision making by changing the organization's management system so that we can focus on improving and redesigning supply chain processes that deliver on those 10 rights we mentioned before. Some example guiding principles could be here. We've got visibility, value stream thinking, lead time reduction, quality at the source, complexity management, performance management. So if we're sitting in a meeting and we're talking about changing our distribution strategy from a hub and spoke model where inventory is closer to the manufacturing locations and we've got less inventory closer to the customer. And we're thinking about moving that to now it's a customer focused or a customer weighted distribution strategy where there's no hub and all of our inventory is pushed out into the spokes. Okay? That is a valid decision to consider, one direction or the other. But we've got to understand that in order to manage and execute that, there's going to be implications to shipping. There's going to be implications to manufacturing. There's going to be implications to the ordering cycles and the ordering processes. There's going to be implications to customer performance. And if we don't manage the right kind of necessary decisions in balancing all the complexities, we're going to end up with all the inventory in the wrong locations. Transportation costs are going to skyrocket. Customers are not going to get the material they need when they need it. It's going to end up driving cost up, performance down, revenue is going to fall, and it's going to be a bad decision. So we've got to go in with all the right guiding principles, that we're going to have the right information, the right visibility to the material and information flow of the process, that we're going to collaborate throughout the value stream to drive value in an end-to-end basis, that we're going to reduce lead time in all of our activities, that we're going to embed quality at the source, that we're going to manage the complexity of our decisions and really try to drive revenue and drive performance. Now, what do we mean by visibility? Well, very quickly, visibility could be at a warehouse level, it could be at a facility level, it could be utilizing the systems that we have to display the right information inside of offices. It could be making sure that it's on websites and in the cloud. It could be just sending the right email at the right time. But it's about making sure that we know what information needs to be shared, who needs to have it, and then making sure it's visible. It's right there in front of them so that they can see as a group, they can decide then as a group, and then they can act as a group to respond to what they're seeing. From a value stream thinking process, we've got the all internal and external folks together collaborating so that they're managing from a total cost perspective. If you remember at the very beginning, I said one of the clashes that we have is in these management by objective cultures where we're really trying to chase and improve these one or two performance areas that I'm being managed by without any regard for upstream or downstream performance. And so we're saying, no, we're going to set that aside and say, how do we manage the entire system from a total cost? So we're thinking with regard to the value stream. Lead time reduction. This is the acknowledgement that all of the activities that we perform, that our entire lead time is made up of things that add value and things that are wasteful. All the waiting times between value-added activities can be wasteful. So how do we reduce lead time? By just eliminating the waste. And as we eliminate that waste, how do we capture all of that lead time improvement so that the system as a whole can perform better? Because the ultimate business model is for us not having to do anything until we get an order. The problem is that our lead time prevents us from doing that. Now, quality at the source. We recognize that as we're executing the material flow throughout the supply chain, that the vast majority of the decisions that have been made and the problems that arise in execution come from poor quality in the information flow. So we got to make sure that we've got the right information and good quality information throughout our processes of our information flow, that we're purchasing in the right lot sizes, that as we're planning, we're understanding the lead time implications and what dock to stock means as we're doing the production planning and running our production wheels, that we're aligning those production wheels with distribution models and distribution cadences. The S&OP process is really tied together to help us make decisions both short-term and long-term. Our demand planning activities is really responsive and reflective to make sure that we've got business processes running accurately. And this is a common example in a lot of the organizations we deal with. The demand planning area will be measured on forecast accuracy. And so as a way to get their forecast accuracy up, they try to measure their forecast accuracy at a level that operations can't do anything with. So as long as they've got the right dollar amounts in there, regardless of the actual SKUs, then they've got an accurate forecast and they win and they get bonuses or they don't get heat. All the while manufacturing is looking at all the demand planning activity and wondering where's the value. How is this actually helping us? So we've got to start thinking through all of these areas of information flow and material flow and say, how do we improve the quality of the information flow to drive the performance and cost reduction in the material flow? And then complexity management, recognizing that our business are always going to have an area of complexity, an element of complexity. So how do we gather the right facts so that we can approach this in a very balanced way, make the right decisions at the right times. And then performance management. This is the adding of pressure, the constant check and adjust against the plan versus actual, so that we can drive performance, so that we can reduce cost over time. We recognize that the system is going to try to fall apart. Processes are going to try to fall apart. Entropy is going to happen. So we have to add pressure, that daily PDCA, that weekly PDCA, to drive the performance day in and day out. And the supply chain system has to have the management system, the principles, and the goals in order to operate this. So when asked the question, how do we take lean from manufacturing to supply chain? The first hurdle that we've got to get over is that the two things are not disconnected as two different silos, but they're a system, and we have to operate them as a system. And then we apply the lean principles into the system. And Jacqueline, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, Derrick, thank you for facilitating our session today. As mentioned previously, today's webinar is being recorded. Look for an email following our time together for a link to the recording. Feel free to share this throughout your organization. So again, thank you, Derrick, and thanks to each of you for participating in today's session. Goodbye.